Hello and welcome to this Interpreting Wine's first ever mindful drinking series. I am, of course, your host and podcast founder, Lawrence Francis. This 5-part series will air between episodes 301 and 305 on the channel, and what originally started as a focus on non-alcoholic drinks evolved into a much wider discussion around mindful drinking, which I think, as you'll see, is really the bigger point here, aside from whether a drink has alcohol in it or not. That being said, this series features a number of voices influencing the mindful drinking agenda by focusing on lower or no alcoholic drinks. We look at cocktails with the founders of the London Cocktail Week, and finish the series with a couple of brands who I think are making massive strides in this area. And without further ado, here is today's episode of the series. Today's episode of the podcast features Hannah Sharman-Cox and Siobhan Payne of London Cocktail Week. We hear from them the origins of London Cocktail Week and how it has grown to be the largest event of its type in the world, now in its 10th year. The pair do a deep dive into the business and the incredible data insights that the week gives them, before discussing the 7-year lag between the trade and the consumer and how this might help non-alcoholic spirits establish themselves all the more quickly. Enjoy.
So we are here on the third day of London Cocktail Week, which is now in its 10th year. London Cocktail Week started in 2010. Yeah, I had to work that out then. In 2010, as what we thought was going to be a bit of a trade event, actually. We thought it was going to be full of our friends and that they'd turn up and we'd all hang out and we'd have some drinks and we'd say and show how brilliant the London cocktail bar scene was in 2010. And we thought that lots of people would fly in like they did in America. They still do, obviously, but there was also a similar event in New York that lots of people were flying in for. And so London Cocktail Week started to kind of replicate that, really, but very quickly. And within its second year, by which point Siobhan and I were working together, very quickly it became a consumer event, and that has continued and rolled. And now sitting here at year 10, we are the biggest consumer event of its kind in the world, which is no mean feat and fairly unbelievable. But yeah, so we're here in our 10th year. Extended event to 10 days, which felt like a really good idea 2 years ago when I said it to Siobhan. This is a good plan. We won't do 7 days. We'll do 10 for 10 years.
Terrible idea.
It was a terrible idea. It just means that we're extra tired. But yeah, so we're on the Sunday before. We then normally we'd start tomorrow, but it's that we've just done an extra bit. Brilliant.
Yeah, I joined Hannah in 2011. For London Cocktail Week, and previously I'd been working in PR for drinks brands, and yeah, we've been working together ever since on London Cocktail Week. But in the last 5 years we've launched a number of other festivals. So we have London Wine Week, London Beer Week, Cognac Cocktail Weekend, Scotch Whisky Weekend, Porn Star Martini Day, Espresso Martini Fest. What else have we got? Loads.
We've got loads.
Yeah.
We love a day, a weekend, a week, and apparently we love 10 days as well, because I definitely think the weekends were better. But anyway,
the weekends are good.
Yeah,
the whole concept of the festivals is about getting people to look at what they're drinking and hopefully drink a bit better. So not necessarily drinking more, but just trying things that they might not have tried before, going to places they might not have gone before, and the whole thing behind what we do is working with venues in London that we think are really good and that we would personally recommend, and we only work with venues that we think are of a certain level, that we feel happy to tell people that they should be drinking in those bars. So that's the kind of the concept behind all the festivals, and usually the way that we do that is through a drink mechanic. So people get a festival pass. So for London Cocktail Week, the festival pass is a tenner. That's it. And then they can show that festival pass in the bars to get a discounted drink. And the thing around that is cocktails are really expensive, and
even 10 years ago they were expensive.
Yeah.
So we were £4 when we first started doing the festival pass offer. It was just £4. It crept up to £5, much to the outrage of the great British public, and now it's unbelievably at £6, but that is probably £10 cheaper than it would be normally.
Yeah.
So by the time you've bought a pass and bought a drink, if you buy a second drink, you've made your money back. But like Shiv says, the whole point is that we take the option out. So each bar, actually it's kind of extended, and we'll get onto this later, but it used to just be one signature serve, and that one serve was available all week for the festival rate. And what that meant is that consumers that perhaps might not have gone into that bar before or might not have tasted that drink before will taste it because it's that price. So they are just, obviously you'd want, if you're given something for £4, £5, £6, you'll drink it. And so what that meant is that the moment of kind of exploration with new drinks perhaps is kind of that chance to taste something different is about that education piece is what we really focus on. And the bit I think why the festival continues to be successful, the bit that we've then moved across into all our others. So with wine, we do a flight of wine. So for £6 you get 3 little glasses of wine. Beer's proved it's proved difficult actually, but I think we might do beer cocktails in 2020. I think that's what we're going to focus on, because actually we've seen beer as a trend in this year's London Cocktail Week as a mixer, rather than just using regular sodas or tonics or whatnot. So I think we might focus on beer cocktails. We have done beer flights, we have done pints and thirds and schooners, but actually it's a really, because of the price of beer and the perception of the price, it's proven one of our more difficult to work with. Not that we will be beaten. But yeah, obviously cocktails for £6 is just such unbelievable value in the kind of calibre venues that we're talking about, using the kind of calibre spirits that we work with. So yeah, it's a really amazing way to see London.
So this year actually, and last year we added on an extra element to the cocktail tours. So, and this I think is relevant to our conversation today, because we felt that we should give people not necessarily an option on their spirit, but an option on the strength of alcohol that they might consume in that bar. So 2 years ago we let all the venues serve a second signature serve, which had to be lower ABV than the first, and it went quite well. Lots of bars opted in. The pickup was okay, but we felt that we wanted to keep it up. So last year we gave bars the option to do full strength cocktails, lower alcohol cocktails. So it's important to say it's not low alcohol, because the terminology around it is quite difficult, but lower than a normal strength drink. So both of those at £6, and then we also added in the option to do a non-alcoholic cocktail at £4. And what was really interesting was, whereas the first year when we gave people the option to do this, bars the option to do this, the buy-in to the lower alcoholic drinks wasn't that high. By the second year of doing it was almost equal between the people buying the full strength alcohol drinks and the lower alcoholic drinks. People were really opting for it, which is an amazing change in 1 year. So last year was the first year that we did a non-alcoholic option for £4, and the pickup, again, it was just quite. It was okay. It was fine. It was good. So we're interested to see how the pickup will be this year, and whether it will follow the same kind of trajectory as the lower alcoholic drinks.
Yeah, and also there's just so much more product available now. Like Seedlip is leading the way, right? It was one of the first to come out, but since then to now, like there's just, there's, as just shown from where we were just sat, there's product upon product upon product launching, and some of those guests there today are like, oh, my product's still in production, but I wanted to come and have a look. And products that we're really fortunate. We get sent most things and taste most things, but there's still stuff all the time that we're like, oh wow, I didn't know that existed. So obviously with the change of what's happening from producers, that allows us to do more as a festival, and then the ripple down is then what the consumers choose to do. That all does take a few years. That's one of the things that from 10 years of doing this, you do see that where that little ripple effect goes, and it is really fascinating. Of like, when the first year, we looked this up the other day, the first year gin was not very prevalent at all within our offering. In 2011, I think it was, that was when all the media was like, gin is going to be huge, it's going to be huge, it's going to be huge. By 2012, they were like, I might have over-egged that, sorry, got it wrong. And then by 2013, and every year since, it's our number one spirit. So like that little arc of like, the industry say go, the press say, oh, messed it up, and then the consumers then pick up like a couple of years later. That little arc is so interesting, and I think we'll see the same thing with the NA. The fact, but we just really felt, you know, and we love a drink, absolutely do, but also we're like an option. Everybody should have an option.
I think everyone should have an option to not drink, and so we feel pleased that we've added the option for people to come and enjoy London Cocktail Week, even if they're not drinking alcohol, because
the experience is the same.
Yeah, the experience is the same, and also like drinks, there are non-alcoholic drinks that are delicious, and that just as much work has gone into it, if not more, because you obviously have to work a bit harder to create a really, really amazing drink without the complexity of spirit, and we wanted to celebrate that, so we were really pleased. We've got
really
more than 100 bars are serving a non-alcoholic cocktail for London Cocktail Week at £4, which is about a third of all the bars, which is amazing, I think. We've got 2 completely non-alcoholic bars in the Cocktail Village. So the Cocktail Village is a big event that we run in East London for 5 days at the end of the festival, and that's where there's 40 pop-up bars and lots of experiences, and it's kind of a one destination place for celebrating London Cocktail Week. So we've got 2 non-alcoholic bars in there, and then today we're at the Hub in Covent Garden, and it is a non-alcoholic takeover by La Maison Wellness, who you've spoken to, and the whole pop-up is just celebrating non-alcoholic drinks. She's got lots of brands doing masterclasses and serving drinks and doing all sorts of really exciting things, and I mean it's brilliant. We just feel delighted that it's such a genuine celebration. You know, we're not just doing it for the sake of it. The content is so good, and as Hannah said, it just shows where the market is at the moment, and there is hunger for it. Like this, you know, earlier on today, we've had people coming to the Hub to experience London Cocktail Week, and we've said, okay, well, in this space specifically, the drinks are non-alcoholic, and people are like, oh, cool, yeah, we'll try this. Rather than being like, oh, no, we wanted to get drunk. It's not where people's heads are at anymore. Yeah. They want to, like, it's about experience and flavour. It's not about getting drunk, and that's really exciting for us that we can be part of it.
All the way through this whole journey, for us, you know, when you 101 of opening a business, you have to write your plans and your mission statements, and one of the words that we've always come back to, and it is so important to us, is inclusivity. Like, never ever should anybody feel like they can't be part of it. Like, the money to be involved is small, the drinks prices is small. No one ever is going to be like, what, you know, that kind of sneery question of like, what gin do you want in your gin and tonic, which I think is so negative for our industry. Like, it's okay if you don't know what gin you want in your gin and tonic. Like, that's okay. Fine, I know what gin I want, but that's because it's my life's work. Like, there's lots of things I don't know what I want for, and I don't want to be made to feel silly because I don't know that. So this point of inclusivity is something that we've, like, every time when we write a new plan or we get a new idea, we're like, does it tick a box for everybody? And this, like Shiv said, this NA piece that we're doing, it's not to get on a bandwagon. It's because we, like, truly want people to feel welcome, regardless of why they're not drinking. It's none of our business. It's nobody's business why you're not drinking. But if there's something for somebody, then amazing.
So it's super cool to finally get down to sit and do this on the 10th year, you know, to actually have those other 10 years to sort of, you know, look back on and kind of think about. And yeah, it's super interesting for me, you know, where you thought you were going to start right on year one is in a, you know, absolutely a completely different place. And I'm just wondering, if you could just, I guess, maybe just unpick a little bit about, I guess, really some of the value that I think often if you just sort of go to where kind of the market is kind of setting you in a way, you're serving the market, but then also you, no doubt, because you are busy, because you are seeing all of this sort of throughput of drinks and ideas, no doubt it's actually quite a valuable and quite interesting situation to be, just in terms of the sort of the data that's crossing your desk and maybe some of the insights that you can draw about drinking behaviour and brands and no doubt 101 other things.
So one of the questions that Shiv and I are often asked is kind of where do we fit within the industry? We don't bartend ourselves, so obviously, totally pointless. Although we can make a really good martini at home.
Or Negroni.
Or Negroni. They're the only drinks we can make. But where we really see ourselves is as the conduit between the entree, the bartender and the consumer. Because of what we do and because we're all the time, we're kind of mining all this information from people, whether that's the bars and what they choose to serve during one of our festivals, or whether that's our consumers and what they choose to drink during one of our festivals. We've kind of got this balance of information all the time, which is, I understand that for lots of people it isn't super fascinating, but actually for us, thankfully, it is actually super fascinating. So, we say to 300 bars a year at a time, you put forward the drink that is the best drink of your venue, and then for a week we send 25,000 people into those bars to choose their favourite. And so actually when we look at trends, we get the bar trends first off. So we were just saying like beer is coming through, lavender randomly this year. Last year, Pisco was just like really booming, all the Amaros, all those kind of, we haven't really, we're just kind of getting through this year's version of all of this. But so we see all that data come in and, we sit with 350 drinks recipes and say, okay, this is what's happening. And then in a month's time, when we get all the sales data from the tills of actually who served what, we go back to like, okay, we presented all this data to regular people, normal people that just want to go out in London and have a nice time. Then what did they drink? And that is so interesting because suddenly something that a bartender says is interesting is perhaps or not, or yes, good or, yes or no, is what the consumers are choosing to drink. Being really, really truthful, and this is it's one of those things that, it would be wonderful if when the bartender says, we think Pisco is going to be huge and it's our number one drink of that year. That would be wonderful if that correlated, but it just doesn't. Crowd pleaser drinks, espresso martinis, porn star martinis are currently...
Vodka drinks, every year it's really, really popular.
But things that perhaps bartenders would say, I've made drinks with that, I understand that, I'm ready to learn something more. Actually, we see the consumer journey, which is not quite where we are yet, and so that disparity between the two, we've spent quite a lot of time tracking this, and there's basically from it hitting the media with a journalist saying this is going to be a trend to being the real mass trend. We've worked that back, and that's about 7 years. Yeah, as long as that, which is I just think is.
Which is why you get the headlines of no, it was a damp squib, gin. We were looking at the life cycle of gin, say, as a trend, and it hit the media and it was like, gin's the next big thing. And this is when no one was really drinking gin. Then about a year later, there was loads of articles being like, gin trend prediction proven to be incorrect. It was all wrong, blah, blah. But then it was a further 5 years, and suddenly it actually was a trend. So, rum at the moment is the one that everyone's saying, rum is the next big thing, there's, sales of rum. But, for us, it's not there with the consumer. It's really not there.
It is there with the collectors. So, the whiskey collectors are moving on to collecting aged rum. Yes, the sales data is certainly showing that it's going up, but that's because they're buying old and rare. It's not because they're, churning through white rum in a bar quicker than you can possibly put it in a bottle.
Yeah, so the value of the category is going up, but that is not necessarily the volume. But I think, and that's rum, but with non-alcoholic,
will come into its own probably in another 3 years. By then, rum will be the new gin. People will be putting dried juniper berries. We're sitting here maybe now with a gin and tonic that has...
No, don't give it away, Hannah.
That has 4 dried juniper berries in a glass for absolutely no reason whatsoever, but, nice that they offered. But soon... that same level of care will go into a rum and coke, which will now only be called a Cuba Libre. Like that is just how...
I think like we're talking about non-alcoholic today, and I feel that non-alcoholic is in a similar place to rum. Like lots of people are talking about it as a massive trend, but how long is it going to be till it actually is just so normal that you would order a non-alcoholic drink because
non-alcoholic gin tonic? Yeah.
I mean, and that we're obviously, I think we're obviously on the same kind of wavelength, because, as soon as you started talking about the 7 years and the, I guess the sort of lag, if you want, or, just sort of, what stage are we at with NA then? Because I'm obviously seeing and reading probably a lot of the same magazines you are around, being obviously put out there. The brands are investing, the brands are out there. Where if we're saying, right now the industry is super bullish and really, yourselves have got this investment and there are people coming through the doors. Where are we in that sort of 7-year lag, really?
So I think what's really interesting is that, and we've talked about this before, is that we need to, whatever happens, we need to close the 7-year lag. 7 years is too long. 7 years is like people, that's not the same people in the job, that's not the same people behind the bar, and it's not the same consumer. You at 20 was not the same you as 27, and you at 30 is not the same, or hair that's of colour rather than mine. People grow up in 7 years. You talk about 7-year cycles, you're in a different stage of your life. So that 7 years is way too long. But what I think has changed, and what I think, and this is why I think NA is exciting, and why generally 2019 is exciting, is that we're so much better educated. We talk so much more. We're given so much more information that I do think that 7-year gap is gonna get smaller. Yes, we're at the start of NA, but the start of NA really was done 2-3 years ago with Ben and Seedlip. He paved the way, he did the thing. Thank goodness for him, because he wanted to change the way the world drinks. Well, I could speak in English, which would be amazing. He wants to change the way the world drinks, rather than in the wrong tense. And he did that. And now we're probably actually at year 3. But I don't think we need to wait another 4 years for it to be totally mainstream, because I think, again, because the world's changed, because media changes, because these kids that are growing up, and this 25% of millennials that don't drink, they're so much savvier than we were. When we were 22, we were idiots. And these kids aren't idiots. They're God bless kids, because they're coming through and they're making a difference. So I think that 7 years will go down, and I think it will just get shorter and shorter and shorter over the next however many years.
And as those kids are growing up, and there's just more and more and more of them,
that becomes.
And they want to go out, they want to have fun and party, but they don't want to get drunk or drink alcohol, or they don't want to get drunk, but maybe a little bit tipsy. So they might have one alcoholic drink and then switch to a non-alcoholic drink. It's not.
I just think it's a different. I just think people. I think the whole thing has changed from our generation.
Oh my God.
Gen X, Zennials, all this.
From the drinking the Lambrini generation.
Yeah. White lightning.
It's not that
White
anymore.
lightning on the cliffs. It's not that anymore. No, kids don't do that. We did that, but. Thankfully, I don't think.
I was Bacardi Breezes in the skateboard park.
Yeah, you were cool.
Classy.
Trendy, you mean?
So, I mean, as you were talking there, my mind did go in the same direction. Really, it was that because kind of everything else, adoption, if you like. You look at how long it took. Was it 50% of the world to get on television or to get on a mobile phone, and all of these cycles and circles, they're getting sort of shorter and shorter. And I'm just wondering again, back to that 7 years, because that's sort of proven, that's what you've seen, and that's what the data is showing. I mean, what do you think might be the opportunities to shorten that? Maybe some specifics, or maybe even who do you think maybe maybe this is back to NA? Is the category going to do that shorter, through by design, or is it maybe something that you can't predict, and it's just a time, it's all of these factors coming together?
I think With regards to shortening the time, I think it's about educating the influencers. And when I say influencers, I mean, in the drinks industry, I mean the bartenders and the brands, not Instagram influencers. Educating them that there is this lag in this cycle, so that then they can actually take active steps to shorten it. And that might be doing something on their menu, for example, like, on a micro level, but if everyone's doing that. And Hannah and I have done a talk recently about this lag to bartenders, and people were like, actually, this is relevant and we should all be working together to shorten it. So, the brands doing more consumer education pieces, the bars doing menu inserts. There's all these little things that can be done to just increase coverage.
I think the biggest proof, and this is so random, but I think the biggest proof of how the world has changed is plastic straws. That picture of that turtle came out. You cannot get a plastic straw for love nor money these days. We're drinking here with a paper straw. We were at
a massive event last week, and there was no straws, so there wasn't
not even a paper straw.
There were not even paper straws.
Straws.
We brought our own metal straws, didn't we?
We did. We brought our own metal straws. Because sometimes you need a straw. But
if you're wearing lipstick, you need a straw.
You do need a straw.
God.
However, but that changed almost overnight. There are plastic straws in landfills all over the world that now can't be used, which is probably also completely against the point of plastic straws. But that happened immediately. One picture of one turtle, and all those kids were like, actually, you're right, this is really rubbish. We shouldn't have plastic straws. That's not okay for the environment. And it was changed. And we're sitting in a unbranded pub in the centre of central London, which I'm sure couldn't give a monkeys about plastic straws, or turtles probably, although they're perfectly nice. We don't have a plastic straw. That is proof indeed that that the cycles are getting shorter. The world is getting smaller, and consequently anything that becomes a trend somewhere becomes a trend everywhere very quickly. So I think, as weird as that sounds to make the analogy about our life cycles of brands and spirits and non-alcoholic spirits and cocktails, if we bring it back to plastic straws, when something becomes hip or the right message, it will happen overnight, which I think it's fascinating, if I'm honest, because it's a straw, and yet, if you're seen with a plastic straw, it's always, not that wasteful, which is just in itself, I think, is unbelievable.
Yeah, I love how the conversation has gone. I really do. I think it's I think it would have been remiss of me to shoehorn you into just talking about NA, because you're obviously bringing up a lot of things here about other drinks categories and about other trends, and I think all of that experience, I think it's something interesting that non-alcoholic brands can learn from. I don't think it has to be like, we're reinventing the wheel. A lot of the same venues now that previously have stocked alcoholic drinks and continue to stock alcoholic drinks are now opening their mind and opening their menus up to these things. And coming later on in the series will be Claire from Acorn, and I know that she came across from Belvedere, and I hope you will see and you will hear through the conversation. It's a kind of a perfect fit in a way that you wouldn't really want anyone else, I think, going in, speaking to the bartenders, having those conversations, and it just feels like, I really love the way it's gone, because you're bringing all that you've learned on the cocktail side, on the brand side, and I guess really showing and sharing with some of these NA brands about how they can do it, and it's I think it's going to be a help to a lot of people.
I think if you're going to be an NA brand, if you're going to be a non-alcoholic spirit, you have to think of yourself as a spirit. And what's the difference in marketing a spirit or a non-alcoholic spirit? There's none. And so if you bring all that sensibility and all that learning and all that care and craft that goes into making an NA, that goes into making a spirit, bring the same to an NA. If you're going to take all that time to stir a drink down, who cares? Who cares whether it's an NA or an A? It makes no difference. It's about the care and quality of the product. And speaking, you just mentioned Claire. I know that's something that Claire felt very, very strongly about when she moved across. She's bartender born and bred, and had spent 14 years on Belvedere vodka. But for her, mindful drinking and wellness and lowering your sugar and lowering your this, all those things that she'd worked so hard on in the background, that doesn't have to go away. just because the product has an ABV doesn't mean that any of that care has to change, which is I think the biggest thing that we need to be talking about. Whether if you're calling yourself a non-alcoholic spirit, you're a spirit. I understand, not technically you're not, but bring the same craftsmanship across. So this is our 10th London Cocktail Week, as we mentioned before. We are terribly, terribly proud to have got to 10 years. It's a very personal milestone for us as well, obviously, as a professional one. It's the thing that we always said, God, imagine if we got to 10 years. And here we are. Here we are at 10 years. So London Cocktail Week is happening now. It's happening between the 4th and the 13th of October. Festival passes are just £10. They're available from our website, londoncocktailweek.com. And once you have your festival pass, you can visit any one of our 340, probably and counting, because bars are still sending submissions in, 340 bars that are all serving a £6 drink, a £6 lower ABV drink, and a £4 non-alcoholic drink. And your festival pass also gets you access to our biggest ever cocktail village, which opens on Wednesday the 9th of October on Brick Lane. We've taken over 2 spaces. We're putting up the biggest tent that the tent company has ever put up. They are having absolute kittens as we speak now. And we have 40 pop-up bars coming in, all of which are bringing really inclusive, experiential pop-up spaces. Our food has come from Street Feast, who are long-term friends of ours. So they're bringing in 10 traders who are all coming in to make sure everybody's well fed. We have daily entertainment from some of the best nightlife in London. We've got our friends from Sync the Pink. We've got Ultimate Power. We've got hip-hop brunch, disco brunch on Sunday. Every single day. It is definitely all happening. It's going to be a huge party opening on Wednesday the 9th on Brick Lane.
Thank you so much, Hannah and Siobhan, for appearing. Fantastic to tap into some of your insight from 10 years of London Cocktail Week. And a huge congratulations to you on achieving that milestone. The best place to find out more is the Drink.Up London website, which I've included a link to below, as well as all the social media handles to see pictures and videos from this year's event. Do also head over to interpretingwine.com/listen, which has details of where you can listen and how you can subscribe to the podcast. We change things up next in the Mindful Drinking series, as we welcome the first of the brands that will be covered, with founders Kirsten Robinson and Julia Kessler of Nicks and Kicks. See you then.